Earth, the early 22nd century. Rain fell in sheets across the charred husk of the city of New Avalon. What once gleamed as the crown jewel of Earth's eastern seaboard was now a graveyard of ambition. Towers stood hollowed, their skeletal frames jutting like broken ribs against a sky boiling with warp-stained clouds. Thunder growled low and constant, shaking shattered glass from the shells of ruined buildings. Fire licked at the streets below, painting reflections in the rain-slick rubble. High above the carnage hovered a single point of defiant light. A green lantern, Cade Voss. Emerald energy pulsed around his battered frame. His breathing was ragged, his chest rising and falling in painful stutters beneath his scorched armor. Once a brilliant emerald, his uniform was now a tattered patchwork, seared and blackened by warp flame and radiation from the rift. His jaw was set, his eyes looked downward, unblinking. Beneath him, in the smoking heart of a 20-block crater, the thing shifted. It rose slowly, almost lazily, from a chasm torn in the fabric of reality. Its form changed with every second. Wings folded into rotting sails, claws stretched into temporal feelers, and where its face should have been, it was only a blur, as if time itself refused to record its image. It screamed, a warping anti-sound of paradox and madness. The scream shredded reality in pulses. Voss grit his teeth. "This is Lantern Cade Voss of Sector 2814, he said, his voice trembling but resolute. Unidentified extra-dimensional incursion. Category Omega Plus. Potential timeline destabilization imminent. Requesting Guardian support and reinforcement from any nearby lanterns." The ring pulsed. "Guardian support unavailable. All lanterns within relay radius are non-responsive or terminated. Probability of survival 0.4%. Voss chuckled, a bitter breath in the storm. "That's better than my odds on Sindar Secundus." The creature turned its shifting gaze skyward. It moved, not with speed, but inevitability, folding space around itself with each motion. The buildings near it crumpled, sucked inward like crushed tin. Voss didn't wait. He raised his fist, and emerald light flared. With a roar he descended like a comet, conjuring a greatsword the size of a bus. It slammed down with the force of a meteor. The street cracked. The beast split into 5 echoing versions of itself, each twisting into different futures. Then it snapped back into one unharmed. Voss skidded back through the air, his eyes wide. "You're not playing by the rules. That's not fair." The thing screamed again, then the sky cracked. A shockwave of twisted time radiated outward, rippling through the city. Windows shattered. Skyscrapers collapsed like dominoes. Vehicles soared into the air and then froze, hovering, before crashing back down in impossible directions. Voss was hurled backward, caught mid-air by his ring's fading barrier. He slammed through the upper floors of a fallen building, coughing blood as rubble rained around him. Structural damage to construct barrier at 78%. Recommend immediate disengagement. No, he coughed, forcing himself to stand in midair, hovering above the abyss. If this thing gets through, timelines fracture, the galaxy burns, and billions die. He ascended again, higher than before, into the roiling thunderclouds. The rain sizzled against his light. The storm turned green as his ring surged. He poured his soul into it. Constructs exploded outward, city-sized rail cannons, titans bristling with weapons, an armada of spacecraft glowing with will-forged engines. A burning green halo surrounded him. And then he raised his hand, his voice steady through the storm. In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern's light. The storm split in two, and his constructs rained down. Orbital lances of light stabbed into the crater. A dreadnought crashed into the creature's side, detonating in a brilliant kamikaze burst. For a moment, the entity staggered. Reality itself buckled under the pressure of willpower against impossibility. Voss clenched his fist harder. Come on, come on. The creature reeled, then paused. It smiled, not with a face, nor with a mouth, but with existence itself. Reality around it twisted into mockery, a sneering grin embedded into time. It raised a claw, and the sky tore open. A rift appeared, not formed by his ring, but by claws soaked in warp and entropy. It was a mouth of the Imperium, jagged and howling, laced with screaming stars and unmade gods. Gravity shifted. The city collapsed inward. The portal pulled at everything. The creature surged upward. No, Voss roared, pulling back. Ring, full thrust, get me out of... But it was too late. The creature grabbed him midair. Together, the lantern and this paradox were swallowed into the rift. Space screamed. Time bent and folded into recursive knots. Every second was 1,000 years, and no time at all. The ring flickered, trying desperately to maintain integrity. And then, nothing. On an unknown tomb world in the 41st millennium, the void spat him out like garbage. Cade Voss crashed to the surface of a desolate planet with a thunderous boom, sliding across cracked obsidian rock. He coughed violently as he rolled to a stop, smoke rising from his armor. Sparks danced across his shattered constructs. His head throbbed. His thoughts barely held shape. The sky above him was pitch black. No stars. Only a pale aurora flickered far off, like the dying breath of some ancient nebula. Twin suns glowed, green and low, painting everything in a sickly light. All around him, silence. Absolute, eternal silence. And ruins. Monolithic ziggurats, half buried in sand. Obsidian obelisks etched in lines of fire. Skulls of impossible size lying among rusted war machines, all the colour of dried blood. Ring. Location, he groaned. Unknown sector. No charted stars. Probability extragalactic. Temporal drift detected. Over 38,000 years. He sat up slowly. You've got to be kidding. Gravimetric anomalies suggest proximity to alien tomb architecture. Wait, what? Voss stood up, his alarm creeping in. The ground rumbled. The desert shifted. From beneath the sand, towers began to rise, black and green, humming with ancient power. Glowing veins of energy carved into their surfaces awakened. The temperature dropped. Figures rose from the dunes, silent, metallic, predatory. Eyes of emerald light glowed as they formed ranks. Necrons, dozens, then hundreds. Cade Voss took an instinctive step back. Nope. They raised Gor's weapons in eerie unison. Without warning, the storm began. Beams of green energy tore through the air. Voss screamed upward into flight, dodging and weaving. The ring flared, building a construct shield, but it was weak. Every impact chipped away at it. He fired back, light grenades, energy blades, sweeping constructs of green fire. They fell and rose again, unstoppable. Then one stepped forward, a Necron lord, taller than the rest, his obsidian armor etched with arcane runes. In its skeletal hand it carried a staff, crowned with a pulsating orb of crackling green-black light. The moment Voss locked eyes with it, his ring shrieked. Warning, ring integrity compromised. Foreign suppression field detected. Emergency protocol The Necron Lord raised its staff. The world went white. Pain. Voss plummeted from the sky, crashing into the earth. His constructs failed. His limbs went numb. He rolled onto his back, his vision blurring, and he saw the towering figure of the Lord standing over him, its weapon raised. Ring, he gasped. Last message. Unknown alien species. They're hostile. Very hostile. The staff came down. Light died. Green Lantern Cade Voss was no more. But the ring survived. It hovered silently above his corpse, sparking with unstable energy. As the Necrons withdrew, leaving the dead where they lay, for a moment, nothing. But then it pulsed. Lantern Cade Voss of Sector 2814, deceased, scanning for replacement bearer. Criteria: willpower, fearlessness. Initiating scan. The ring spun, igniting once more, and it shot upward into the black heavens, vanishing like a comet of pure green will. Somewhere, far across the stars, a warrior would soon be found, a new bearer, and the light would burn again. The air was thick with ash and the stench of burning promethium. Fires flickered across the shattered ruins of Sardis V, an imperial world long since condemned to rot beneath the boots of war. Towering spires that once pierced the sky as monuments to the Emperor's glory now lay twisted and broken, like the shattered ribs of a fallen god. Cathedrals wept molten glass from ruptured stained-glass windows. Bells, once rung in reverence, now lay silenced beneath rubble and blood. The dead were everywhere. Some were fresh, others little more than scorched bone. The winds howled with the fury of 1,000 lost souls, stirring ash into choking spirals that danced between the crumbling remains of civilization. And amidst this wasteland moved a single figure, Captain Titus, once a beacon of ultramarine honour, now a relic of war, scarred, solitary, and forgotten. His ceramite armour, once resplendent in blue and gold, was cracked and scorched. Torn purity seals fluttered like the tatters of a broken banner. The proud symbol of the Ultramarines was barely visible on his left pauldron, half melted and warped beyond recognition. He had survived for months in the ruins, evading the gaze of chaos, scavenging food and ammunition from corpses and forgotten caches. His brothers were dead. His chapter had declared him lost in the blood-soaked jungles of this planet. The Imperium had moved on. But he endured. Not for vengeance, not for salvation. He endured because it was his duty. The skies above Sardis 5 were a churning sea of storm clouds and smoke. The sun, once a beacon of warmth, now glowed faintly like a dying ember behind veils of filth. In the distance, the guttural cries of corrupted war beasts echoed through the ruins, reminding Titus that the war was not over. The Bleeding Spiral, a warband of Slaneshi Chaos Marines, infamous for their decadent cruelty and devotion to agony as ecstasy. They had claimed Sardis 5 as a playground for their twisted rites, turning its people into playthings and its churches into butcher halls. Titus crouched behind a fractured column, his bolter pistol in one hand and his chainsword in the other. His breath was ragged, his mind numb. He was tired, but not broken. He would die standing, or so he thought. The first sign was subtle, a shimmer in the air. Then it came, a streak of emerald fire across the polluted sky, slicing through clouds like a blade of judgment. It halted mid-air, defying gravity, defying logic, glowing brighter than any flare or flare shell. Titus rose slowly, aiming his bolt pistol at the apparition. A ring, small, simple, suspended before him in the air like a judgment waiting to be passed. Its green glow pulsed, slowly, steadily, like a heartbeat. Titus's eyes narrowed. "Witchery," he growled. "Xenos sorcery. I'll have none of it." He raised his bolt pistol, but the ring pulsed again, brighter, closer. Then, without words, a voice, calm and commanding, echoed through his thoughts. It bypassed his ears, vibrating deep in his bones. "Titus of Macrage, you possess great will. You have been chosen." Titus sneered. "I accept no gifts from alien filth. You were betrayed, abandoned, and yet you endure." "I endure for mankind," he spat. Vision struck him like lightning, A world torn apart by silver automatons, necrons, marching in mechanical silence. A lone warrior, clad in emerald armor, holding back the tide. A final stand. A death worthy of respect. Then the ring, soaring through space, searching for his replacement, searching for Titus. He stumbled back, caught between fury and awe. "I didn't ask for this," he whispered, but the ring floated forward, slow and relentless, and then it slid onto his finger. Titus screamed, not from pain, but from revelation. His vision shattered. The universe burst open. Knowledge flooded into him. Galaxies without number. Wars fought beyond Imperial reckoning. An ancient order dedicated not to gods or thrones, but to will, to justice. The Green Lantern Corps. Images seared into his mind. Humans, Xenos, machines, all bound by luminous green light. They wielded power not granted by prayers or relics, but by choice and by strength of will alone. "No," Titus hissed. "This is heresy." "You fear corruption," the ring whispered, its voice now like a chorus inside his skull. "This is not chaos. This is will incarnate." The energy surged, threatening to consume him. But just as the transformation began, just as the green light started to reshape his broken armor, it faltered. A surge of pain slammed into him. The energy fizzled. The ring pulsed erratically. Titus gasped and dropped to one knee, clutching his head. "Synchronization incomplete," the ring echoed. "You resist. The bond is unstable." Titus's gauntlets trembled. His armor remained damaged. The ring dimmed, as if waiting for permission he would not yet give. He rose slowly, clutching his chainsword once more. "I fight with the weapons I know," he muttered. The roar of engines split the silence. From the horizon, the Chaos forces emerged. Rhinos belching black smoke, demonettes dancing between corrupted ruins, and at the rear, a monstrous hellbrute lumbered, its mechanical arms bristling with weapons and its demonic face howling with bloodlust. They had seen the flare of green fire, and they were coming for him. Titus backed away, slipping into the rubble of a collapsed hab dome. The scent of incense and old blood filled the air. He crouched low, his heart pounding, adrenaline sharpening his thoughts. "Captain Titus," the voice was sultry and sickening. A Slaneshi champion calling out from the open square. "Come now, let us taste that defiant soul of yours, so ripe, so full of pain." Titus didn't respond. He waited. He watched. He counted the enemies. 6 Chaos Marines, a dozen cultists, 2 demonettes, and of course the Hellbrute. Too many. The bolt pistol felt heavy in his hand. The chainsaw buzzed softly. Its teeth were worn, but still deadly. He took a breath, exhaled, then charged. Bolt rounds barked. A cultist's head exploded in a mist of bone and brain. Another fell screaming as Titus's chainsword tore through his chest, revving with brutal purpose. A Chaos Marine turned, too slow. Titus slammed into him, driving the chainsword through the power armor's weak point at the joint. Blood sprayed, and the heretic fell. Then the Hellbrute roared. A beam of warp-infused plasma seared past Titus's head, detonating a nearby wall. The shockwave threw him against a pillar. His vision swam. Blood dripped from his nose. He rolled to the side just as a demonette lunged, her claws slicing the air. The ring pulsed again. "You are surrounded." Titus coughed blood and rose. "I noticed. You cannot win this alone. Use the ring. I don't know how. Then learn. Will it. Focus." Another Chaos Marine rounded the corner. Titus fired his last bolt round. A clean shot, straight through his eye lens. He ducked behind cover. His heart was hammering, his ammo depleted. Enemies were closing in. The Hellbrute stomped forward, hammering its fist into the ruins. Titus clutched his ringed hand. He stared at the emerald band, now flickering like a failing light. "You must believe." Outside, the champion of Slaanesh laughed. "Come now, warrior. Let us embrace. Let us peel you apart slowly." Titus closed his eyes. He thought of his brothers, dead. He thought of his chapter that had abandoned him. He thought of the Emperor, silent. He thought of the civilians buried in the rubble, the world burning, and the cost of failure. And then he thought of will, of what it meant to stand even when all others had fallen. His breathing slowed. He clenched his fist. "I will not break." The ring flared, not brightly, not fully, but enough. A hum filled the air. Energy surged around his hand. Emerald lines traced his gauntlet, forming shapes in midair, jagged, unstable and flickering. The rubble before him rippled. A construct began to form, raw will given form. A shield. Titus's eyes widened as the barrier solidified just in time to catch a burst of plasma. The Hellbrute screamed in frustration. Titus stood. The green light glowed brighter, lines of power coursing up his arm. A whisper echoed. Construct creation initiated. Titus raised his hand. The light exploded outward. The green shield construct shimmered before Captain Titus, still humming with residual energy as the plasma impact faded. Smoke trailed from its surface, but the shield held. Titus's eyes were wide, not with fear, but revelation. He had made this, willed it into existence. Construct stable, the ring intoned. Neural synchronization at 32%. Further commands may now be attempted. Titus clenched his teeth, ducking backwards as debris exploded nearby. The Hellbrute thundered forward, roaring its hatred. Cultists howled in ecstasy, and demonettes danced closer with slicing claws and lolling tongues. Titus stood slowly behind the barrier. Green lines still pulsed up his arm, crackling in the stormlit dusk. "I need more than a shield," he growled. Then create, the ring replied. Its voice was calm and unwavering. Focus on intent, picture form, will it. Titus narrowed his eyes. The enemy was closing in. His bolt pistol was spent. His chainsword lay somewhere in the dust. All he had now was this, a weapon forged not of metal or fire, but of resolve. He stared at his open hand. Form a weapon, he said to himself. Sword. A shimmer, a surge. Emerald light raced into shape. Unstable at first, then solidifying into a massive two-handed blade of translucent energy. Its edges glowed like plasma. Its weight was perfectly balanced. Titus swung it once. It hummed with power. He didn't hesitate. He burst from behind cover like a thunderbolt. The demonette nearest him screeched in shock as the green blade carved her in half, dissolving her into warp-tainted mist. A Chaos Marine turned, its chainsword revving, only for Titus to duck beneath the blow and drive his constructed blade through the traitor's breastplate with a roar. Threat eliminated, the ring confirmed. But Titus didn't need confirmation. He had already moved on, sweeping the blade through a pair of cultists charging from his flank. Their bodies ignited in emerald fire as they collapsed screaming. Behind him, plasma howled again. Titus turned and willed. A thick plate of green ceramite erupted in front of him, absorbing the blast. With a twist of instinct, he split the shield into fragments, sending them flying forward like shrapnel. They struck the cultists with bone-crushing force, snapping their arms and legs and crushing their skulls. He was breathing hard, not from exhaustion, but momentum. This wasn't sorcery. This was war. Construct integrity stable. Neural sync at 49%, the ring reported. You learn quickly. I'm a captain of the Ultramarines, Titus growled. I learn, or I die. The remaining Chaos Marines regrouped, forming a wedge behind a wall of screaming cultists. The Hellbrute raised both its arms, launching a salvo of missiles. Titus raised both hands. Shield. A dome erupted around him. Impact. Boom. The shield cracked, but held. He rolled forward as the dust settled. The battlefield had become a chaos of fire and ruin. Bodies were burning. Stones screamed as they crumbled. Titus took stock. The Hellbrute was still standing. 4 Chaos Marines remained, their armour covered in flayed skin and the sacred symbols of Slaanesh. More cultists poured in from alleyways, drawn by the commotion like vultures to flesh. Their numbers would overwhelm him, unless he fought smarter. Ring, he barked. Can you replicate Imperium weapons? Affirmative. Your memories contain sufficient schematics. Then give me a heavy bolter, braced emplacement, full tactical spread. Construct initiated. With a flash of emerald, a mounted heavy bolter emerged before him, complete with a tripod and ammunition belts, though no ammo was needed. The construct shimmered, fed directly by Titus's will. He took position behind it and opened fire. The heavy bolter roared, not in sound alone, but in purpose. Emerald rounds shredded through the charging cultists, each shot punching clean through their armor, flesh, and madness. They fell in waves, tripping over their dead, only to be consumed by another bolt. Titus swept the barrel with the calm precision of a veteran Astartes. No wasted shots. Every burst was a kill. The Chaos Marines charged. One raised a melter gun. Titus twisted his wrist. A second construct formed, a turret at his flank, rotating autonomously. It opened fire with pinpoint accuracy, slamming into the traitor's torso and launching him backwards in a heap of melted steel. "Ring," Titus growled. "Deploy sentry drones, flanking positions, servo skull optics." Initiated. Two small constructs took shape and zipped away, flanking the Hellbrute as it tried to advance. They buzzed around its armor, scanning and projecting weak points in real time. Titus grinned. He ducked under a blast and summoned another sword mid-sprint, diving at the nearest Chaos Marine. They clashed, but Titus's green blade hissed through the heretic's corrupted armor like it was paper. A single upward slash split its head in two. Synchronization at 71%. Warning: energy reserves at 19%. Then I need to end this. The Hellbrute roared and surged forward, shattering rubble beneath its clawed feet. Its multi-melter spat fire. Titus barely dodged, rolling to cover. Weapon strength is beyond your current output. Risk critical. Then give me something that isn't weaker. Input required. What form shall your will take? Titus stared at the Hellbrute, its corrupted flesh fused with armor and howling with demonic rage. He thought of a dreadnought. Not just any. Ancient Valerion, who once strode beside him on Graia. Unyielding, towering, righteous. Form of dreadnought, class venerable. Melee configuration. Power claw, multi-melter, engage. Construct accepted. From behind Titus, the earth trembled. A glowing green titan rose from the dirt. 12 feet tall, thunderous in its presence, bearing a massive power claw on one arm and a glowing cannon on the other. Titus pointed at the Hellbrute. Destroy it. The constructed dreadnought charged. The two machines met with the force of titans, slamming into one another like war gods. The Hellbrute screamed as the power claw crushed through its weapon arm. It tried to fire and missed. The construct gripped its chest and ripped downward, tearing it in half in a spray of flesh and circuits. The Hellbrute collapsed in two twitching halves. Titus stood in the center of the battlefield, surrounded by corpses. Only the Slaneshi champion remained. She stepped forward from the smoke, her blade coiled like a serpent, her form elegant and monstrous in equal measure. "You shine bright, warrior," she purred. "So beautiful, so breakable." Titus didn't respond. He was already moving. He leapt forward, construct wings bursting from his back with a snap, and collided with her in midair. Their blades clashed once, twice, 3 times. Titus's blade snapped. She laughed. Then he formed another and another. He attacked in a flurry, each strike creating a new weapon in his hand. Hammers, axes, spears, each willed into existence in mid-motion, each one battering her back. She screamed in fury, lunging with a corrupted lash. Titus caught it with a gauntlet and formed a vice around it. With a snarl he pulled her forward and drove a final construct blade into her heart. Her shriek echoed across the ruins as her form disintegrated into smoke and madness. All threats neutralized, synchronization at 92%. The battlefield fell still. Smoke curled skyward. Fires were crackling quietly. Titus stood amidst the ruin and silence. His armor shimmered, reinforced now with partial constructs where his ceramite had failed. His fists were clenched at his sides. His breath slowed. Warning, energy reserves at 6%. Titus blinked. The ring is weakening. Affirmative. The power ring must be recharged. How? Coordinates received. Sector 412.4A. Titus frowned. I have no transport, no voxlink, no ship. There was a pause. Then the ring pulsed. You do not need one. A sudden light surrounded him. His boots lifted from the ground. He hovered, then rose into the air. Faster, higher. Dust swirled below as the gravity of Sardis 5 faded beneath him. Clouds broke. Ash parted. The stars welcomed him. Emerald fire blazed around his body like a comet. Titus looked upward and smiled, and the stars swallowed him whole. Space stretched infinite and uncaring around him. Captain Titus soared through the stars like a green comet, propelled by pure will and ring-born energy. Nebulae spun like cathedrals of stardust in the distance. Dying stars flared in twilight hues. He was a lone figure, clad in power armor, trailing emerald flame as the power ring carried him beyond the Imperium, beyond anything he'd ever imagined. Estimated time to arrival, 2 minutes, the ring said. Titus didn't respond. He was still absorbing the truth. He had left Sardis 5 behind, left the battlefield, left everything he thought he knew, and the ring had brought him here. Oa, the ring intoned, the center of the universe, the seat of the Guardians. A planet came into view, vast and green, but it was scarred. A once glorious world, now cloaked in shadow and silence. Monuments were cracked. Defensive rings drifted in pieces. The surface, a scarred wasteland, flickered with the remnants of power long lost. Titus furrowed his brow. This world is dead. This is incorrect, the ring replied. Oa has existed for billions of years. Catastrophic damage detected. This is not as it should be. Titus descended. He landed amidst shattered emerald spires and broken obelisks. His power armor hissed as it adjusted to Oa's thin atmosphere. There was no sound, not even wind. Just the faint hum of lingering energy and the quiet thrum of his ring. He walked forward cautiously. Burn marks traced across the landscape in sweeping arcs. Great statues lay toppled. Lanterns, literal ones, the symbols of the core, were cracked and half buried. Titus moved with caution, one hand hovering over his sidearm. What happened here? Scans show traces of fear energy, the ring replied. Parallax. What is a parallax? A cosmic entity representing fear incarnate, known enemy of the Green Lantern Corps. Titus stepped over a broken colonnade and paused. Beneath a mound of debris lay a cracked, half-buried lantern, a power battery. This is your recharge station, isn't it? Affirmative. Constructing interface. Titus knelt, brushing away the dust, and pressed the ring against the ancient artifact. It responded instantly. The lantern flared with green light, and his ring pulsed on his finger. Power flooded back into him, a surge of energy that made his armor vibrate. Power levels at 100%, synchronization 94%. Then Titus heard it. Movement. Titus turned, his eyes sharp. He raised a hand, and a construct snapped into existence. A massive green hand of energy. It hovered, waiting for his mental command. He thought of the rubble, and ordered the hand to move it. The construct obeyed, sweeping aside the broken stone like a titan. Beneath the debris, half buried in a crater, was a small figure. Blue-skinned, robed in tattered rags, and chained to the planet with glowing yellow chains that pulsed like heartbeats. Titus instantly drew his bolt pistol and leveled it. Xenos. Stop, the ring said, its voice urgent. Subject identified. Guardian of the universe. Primary creator of the Green Lantern Corps. Titus froze. The figure looked up slowly. Its eyes were dim, its face weary beyond measure. The Guardian met Titus's gaze. You wear the light, the Guardian whispered. After all this time. Titus lowered the pistol. He approached slowly. You are the one who made this ring. One of many, the Guardian said. Long ago. But I haven't seen a lantern in over 10,000 years. I believed I was the last. What happened here? The Guardian closed his eyes. Oa fell in the late 29th millennium. Parallax returned, stronger than ever, and he brought with him an army, the Yellow Lantern Corps. They struck without warning. We fought, but they had evolved. He looked around at the ruins. The Green Lantern Corps died, every last one. Even the central battery was corrupted. The leader of the Yellow Lanterns, Kroaxis, the Mind Flayer, he kept me alive, not out of mercy, as punishment. He gestured weakly to his chains. He bound me here, so that I could watch my core die, watch Oa fall, watch the stars forget us. Titus was silent. The Guardian looked up again. But now you stand here, a lantern. How? Titus looked to his ring. It found me, on a battlefield in the 42nd millennium. I thought it a weapon of chaos or some Xenos trick. It is a weapon of will, the Guardian said, awe in his voice. The ring found you. That alone means something. The ring says it comes from the 22nd century. The Guardian's eyes widened. Even in his weariness, shock overcame him. That's impossible. Titus nodded. And yet here I am. It's a miracle, the Guardian whispered. Or something worse. Titus looked at the chains. Can I free you? If your will is strong enough. Titus raised his ring. It shimmered, then lashed out. Green tendrils wrapped around the yellow chains and pulled. Resistance flared. Yellow lightning burst from the bindings, lashing out at Titus's armor. He gritted his teeth. Break, he commanded in his head. The ring blazed, and the chains shattered like glass. The Guardian collapsed forward, gasping. Titus caught him before he fell. You're free. The Guardian nodded, trembling. I must begin again. He straightened slowly. His robes were still torn, his eyes still sunken. I will rebuild the core. The galaxy needs them now more than ever. Fear reigns unchecked. Sectors have fallen to silence. If even one lantern remains, the light is not extinguished. He looked at Titus. Will you help me? Titus didn't answer immediately. He looked to his ring. It shimmered with green energy, with memory, with potential. He thought of the Codex Astartes. He thought of the Emperor. He thought of Ultramar. And he thought of the words that echoed in his soul. In brightest day, in blackest night. He clenched his fist, and the light flared. The ruins of Oa stretched across the horizon like the bones of a fallen god. Green embers danced in the air, remnants of long-dead constructs, while the eerie silence of a world that once policed the stars wrapped itself around Captain Titus like a burial shroud. He stood before the last guardian of the universe, freed from millennia of torment. Yet still, it was a being of immense gravity. The Guardian hovered now, weak but upright, his eyes glowing faintly beneath a brow furrowed by time. I ask again, Captain, the Guardian said, his voice calm but resolute. Will you help me rebuild the Green Lantern Corps? Titus did not answer. His hand flexed as he looked at the ring upon his finger. Its emerald glow pulsed gently with life and will. But beneath its promise was a question, one that tore at his core. I have already sworn an oath, Titus finally replied, his voice low and guttural. To the Emperor of mankind, eternal service. Unbroken loyalty. I cannot pledge myself to another. The Guardian floated closer, regarding Titus not with judgment, but curiosity. Tell me, he said, what was the purpose of your oath? To serve the Imperium, to protect mankind. And what does this ring compel you to do? Titus was silent again. The Guardian pressed, his voice now edged with gentle intensity. You protect the innocent. You bring justice. You fight chaos. Is that not the Emperor's will? Is that not the very heart of your oath? Titus turned away. Broken constructs and scorched monuments surrounded him, each one a silent testimony to the galaxy's neglect. He had seen countless horrors in his lifetime. Demons, heretics, Xenos. But never had he felt the weight of a question like this. "I am an Astartes," he said at last. "Built for war, forged in fire. We are weapons, not diplomats, not police. You are more than a weapon," the Guardian said. "You are a man who has not broken under the weight of 1,000 battles. You carry not fury, but will, and that is what the ring recognizes." Titus clenched his jaw. His mind swirled with uncertainty. "Let me show you," the Guardian said. He raised his hand. A flare of green light burst forth, surrounding them both. A wave of images crashed over Titus. An entire army of green lanterns soared through space. Thousands of them, each a blazing emerald star. Entire fleets stood down at their approach. Planets celebrated their arrival. Fear retreated before them like shadow before the dawn. He saw them extinguish black holes with sheer will. He saw them imprison gods. He saw them fall in glorious battle against the monstrous entity known as Parallax and against the twisted legions of this Yellow Lantern Corps. And then he saw Oa's fall. An unstoppable storm of yellow light, screams, constructs breaking like glass, green lanterns torn apart in orbit. And in the center of it all, there was a being, cloaked in shadows and psychic flame. Its eyes burned with madness. Its voice was not heard, but felt. Kroaxis, the Mind Flayer. The visions faded. Titus stood panting. "That was the core," the Guardian said, his voice solemn. "And that was the enemy that broke us. You wear the last known ring of a fallen lantern. That it chose you means it sees something in you. Something even you may not yet understand." Titus stared into the sky, his jaw tight. "You want me to take another oath?" "Not to me," the Guardian said. "Not even to the core, but to yourself, to what you believe is right. The ring cannot be commanded by anyone. It can only be wielded by those with the will to act, to fight for what is right, and without fear." Titus looked down at the ring. He remembered Greya. He remembered Macrage. He remembered Sardis 5, the Demonettes, the Hellbrute, and the countless innocents crushed between the good and monsters. He raised his hand. "What must I say?" The Guardian smiled, for the first time in millennia. The ring began to glow. Its light burned brighter than ever before. Words rose within Titus, ancient, etched into the very soul of the ring. He spoke them, his voice deep and unshaking. "In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern's light." The sky ignited. His armor blazed with transformation. The blue of Ultramar was overlaid with emerald circuitry. Green lines pulsed like veins across his pauldrons. The aquila merged with the sigil of the Green Lantern Corps, flaring across his chest. His helmet shifted, sleek, sharp, crowned by a green visor glowing with contained fury. He stood taller, not just a space marine, a Green Lantern, a warrior of willpower. From deep within the planet, the shattered core of the central power battery began to reform. Crystals locked into place, runes reignited. The broken spire shot upward like a spear. A titanic column of green light erupted into the heavens, a beacon reborn. The core had a heartbeat again. Far away, in the Golgothan Moor, where a swirling nebula of psychic storms and dying suns, a fortress made of black iron and bone, floated among the wreckage of broken stars. Kroaxis the Mind Flayer sat atop a throne of screaming thought. His skin, if it could be called that, was obsidian, veined with gold. Dozens of tendrils writhed from his skull. His armor was forged from fear constructs, and his eyes shimmered with terrible intellect. His mind reached across systems, drinking in fear like wine, until something broke the flow. A pulse, not of terror, but hope. The flare of green light tore across the cosmos, cutting through the black like a blade. It was impossible. It was impossible. And yet, Kroaxis stirred. A massive yellow ring hovered near his throne. He raised a clawed hand, and it latched to his finger. Armor unfolded across him in jagged layers. The symbol of the Yellow Lantern Corps, twisted, angry, cruel, glowed bright upon his chest. He rose, floating above the stone. "Oa lives again," he hissed. That little blue worm must have escaped. He turned toward his war council, all grotesque horrors in yellow armor, all kneeling in fear to their leader. "Ready the fleet," Kroaxis said, his eyes narrowing. "We return to Oa. We finish what we started for good. And this time, we crush the light." Back on Oa, Titus stood beneath the rising spire of green fire. He felt that, the Guardian said behind him. "Who did?" "Kroaxis." Titus nodded. His new armor hummed with strength. "Then let him come." He looked to the stars, where destiny waited, where war waited, where the fire of will would be tested once more. The surface of Oa trembled as the central power battery's reconstructed spire pulsed, each beat sending a tidal wave of green energy through the planet's ruined crust. Above the base of the tower, in a chamber bathed in emerald radiance, the Guardian floated before a vast, circular forge. Titus stood beside him, the light of the spire casting sharp shadows across his now emerald-lined armor. He had fought 1,000 battles, yet he felt like a recruit again in the presence of this ancient master. On the forge's surface, dozens of motes of green energy hovered, each pulsing in rhythm with the core. Slowly they coalesced, becoming perfect rings, each carved with the sigil of the Green Lantern Corps, They are alive, the Guardian said, his voice reverent. Each one a seed of hope, a weapon of will. They will fly to the farthest stars, seeking those worthy to wield them. Titus studied the rings. And these will rebuild your core. Our core, the Guardian corrected. This is the first wave, 30 in total. Most will scatter through the galaxies seeking bearers, but... He gestured, and 5 of the rings floated closer to Titus. These are for you to release in the Milky Way. Titus frowned. Why my galaxy? The Guardian's ancient eyes seemed to pierce into the captain's thoughts. Because it is yours, and because it teeters always between survival and oblivion. If we are to prove the core's worth to the universe, the Milky Way must stand as our example. You will secure it. You will show them the light. Titus's jaw tightened. Duty had always been his compass, but now that compass pointed farther than he'd ever imagined. Then I will see it done. The Guardian raised a hand. The rings drifted into Titus's gauntleted palm, their surfaces cool yet thrumming with latent power. Remember, the Guardian said, the rings will choose, not you. Titus nodded. I understand. Emerald fire erupted from Titus's ring, enveloping him in a comet tail of light. The surface of Oa fell away in a blur, and the void of deep space opened before him. Stars streaked past in an endless river of silver and blue. The Milky Way loomed ahead, a spiral of fire and shadow, each arm a war front in some eternal struggle. Titus felt the weight of it all pressing against him. He opened his palm. The 5 rings lifted into the void, hovering in formation before him like a squad awaiting orders. Go, he commanded. They shot forward, emerald streaks splitting apart, each one veering toward a different part of the galaxy. The first ring dove into the heart of an Imperial war zone, above a hive world under siege by Orc warbands. It soared past kilometre-long battleships trading broadsides, past flak bursts and lance strikes. It scanned commanders, soldiers, even the civilians hiding in the depths of the hive, but each failed the test. Their wills bent under fear or obedience, not justice. The ring shot away, disappointed. The second ring swept through the chaos of a dark Eldar raid. It scanned Cabalites, gladiators, even broken slaves, but none bore the will without cruelty. It turned away, vanishing back into real space. The third ring plunged into a Mechanicus forge world, threading through smokestacks and plasma forges. It scanned Magi, Skitarii and tech thralls, but in each, the will was shackled by dogma, devotion to machine over life. The ring flew on. The fourth ring entered the Damocles Gulf, its green blaze stark against the blue-white stars. Below, a Tau Sept world burned, its skies filled with Tyranid spore ships, vomiting endless monstrosities. On the shattered plains outside a defense perimeter, a young Tau fire warrior fought on one knee, his pulse rifle spitting disciplined bursts into a swarm of Hormagaunts closing from all sides. His battlesuit was damaged, torn apart hours ago. Blood leaked from rents in his armour. Around him lay the corpses of his entire squad. The fire warrior's breath came hard, but his hands were steady. He would die standing. The ring saw him. Thou art capable of great will. It darted through the chittering wall of Tyranids, slamming onto his finger in a flare of emerald light. Power surged through him. His armor rebuilt itself in green construct plates, his pulse rifle replaced by a shimmering energy weapon of his own design. A glowing visor formed over his eyes. The swarm hesitated. Then the new lantern charged, a wall of emerald fire cutting through the Tyranids like a scythe. His wounds were sealed, his mind sharpened. For the first time in hours, hope roared in his heart. The fifth ring swept in a silent arc along the haunted edge of the ghoul stars, where light itself seemed reluctant to shine. Drifting within that forsaken region, an Eldar corsair vessel tore through the void. Its elegant hull was scarred and burning as it fled a lumbering orc kill cruiser. Jagged boarding hooks still clung to its flanks, and great rents in its wraithbone plating bled streams of glowing atmosphere into the cold black. Inside, the corridors were chaos. Fires raged in fractured bulkheads, smoke curling like the ghosts of the dead. Through the collapsing passageways ran a single figure, a lithe Eldar warrior. Her rune-etched armour cracked and blackened from shrapnel bursts. One horn of her ornate helm had been shattered clean away, the other swaying as she carried two wounded Asuriani slung over her shoulders. Their blood trailed behind her in bright droplets that drifted in the low gravity. Every step was a battle. The ship trembled under repeated impacts from the orc guns. Doors sealed against decompression, forcing her to smash through them with brute determination. Boarding parties ambushed her in the smoke, hulking green shapes roaring in guttural joy at the thought of slaughter. She met them with nothing but a blood-slicked blade, her movements a blur of desperate precision. She cut a path forward, each strike fueled not by rage, but by the unshakable duty to keep her soldiers alive. The air grew thin. The docking bay loomed ahead, its vast chamber shuddering as containment fields faltered. She stumbled inside just as the far bulkhead burst apart in a deafening roar, void rushing in to claim all within. Her body shielded the wounded from the pull of the vacuum, until the ring found her. It appeared like a shard of living light, streaking through the swirling debris, drawn to her heartbeat. In her mind, a voice spoke without words. You have the will to protect the helpless. You can overcome great fear. The ring slid onto her finger. In an instant, her fractured armor was reborn, emerald plating overlaid with streams of wraithbone, glowing like living crystal. Wings of radiant light flared from her back, lifting her from the collapsing deck. With a single sweep of her arm, a construct skimmer formed from pure energy, and she carried her wounded aboard. The skimmer blasted clear, streaking into the void. The kill cruiser's guns swiveled to track her, but emerald constructs, shaped like spears of solid light, erupted from space at her command, piercing the orc vessel's engines in a blinding storm. Fireballs bloomed from its rear decks, and the ship drifted powerless. Far across the universe, beyond the light of the Astronomicon, the void itself shimmered. A wound tore open in the fabric of space, jagged, unnatural, its edges bleeding yellow light. From within spilled a fleet the likes of which this galaxy had never known. The war armada of the Yellow Lantern Corps. Hundreds of colossal vessels emerged, each sheathed in black and gold armor. Their hulls were bristling with weapon arrays that pulsed with the psychic resonance of fear. Entire worlds had been stripped for the material to build them. Entire civilizations broken to fuel them. At the heart of the armada drifted a nightmare given form. A flagship the size of a moon, carved from the petrified ribcage of a dead god. Its surface was studded with towers of obsidian and veins of molten gold that pulsed like a heartbeat. On a wind-swept balcony of black stone, beneath the shadow of an enormous yellow power battery, stood Kroaxis the Mind Flayer. His elongated skull was crowned with a living crown of tendrils, each twitching and tasting the psychic winds for whispers of thought. His eyes burned with a predatory light, drinking in the fear that rolled across the galaxy. He inhaled deeply, his tendrils writhing in satisfaction. "I can taste it," he hissed, his voice like a blade drawn across bone. "The stench of hope, the rebirth of the Green Lanterns." Turning slowly, he faced his gathered warlords, towering monstrosities clad in segmented yellow armor, their faces hidden behind snarling visors, their eyes glowing like pits of molten gold. They knelt, heads bowed, awaiting his will. "Spread through this galaxy," he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of an executioner's decree. "Hunt down the new bearers of the rings. Crush them before their light can take root." The yellow sigil of the Yellow Lantern Corps flared into the dark behind him, a burning sun that cast everything in a sickly glow. His clawed hand clenched, the light warping around it. "And bring me the first one, the one that lit this spark," he said. "Alive." Across the fleet, the engines roared to life, and the stars themselves seemed to flinch. The meeting place lay on the edge of a dead star system, a nameless desert planet whose cracked surface had not felt the weight of war in millennia. The wind howled across ancient stone amphitheatres, half buried in sand, their builders long since dust. The red dwarf sun bled across the horizon, painting the world in a bruised and dying light. Here, the Guardian's will had guided 3 emerald beacons to converge. The first streak of green fire carved through the sky and slammed into the central plaza with a teeth-rattling impact. The shockwave rippled through the stone. Standing slowly from the crater, the Tau Fire Warrior adjusted the emerald plates of his new armor, the construct still strange against his flesh. His emerald visor scanned the horizon in rapid sweeps, every motion precise and disciplined. The rifle in his hands, a hard light version of his old pulse weapon, reimagined by the ring, hummed with restrained power. He was breathing steadily, but every muscle was coiled, waiting for contact. The second arrival was less subtle. A lance of green brilliance spiraled down, weaving erratically before smashing into the sand a dozen meters away in a plume of dust. Through the settling haze stepped the Eldar warrior, emerald armor adorned with ghostly wraithbone filigree that pulsed with inner light. Her emerald blade shimmered to life in her grip, runes of light dancing along its length. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, immediately locked onto the Tau. But then, the third presence entered the arena. From a rise of rock and shadow, Titus approached, each step heavy with the weight of his ceramite armor. His armor, now green with thin lines of emerald light, caught the dying sunlight in gleaming shards. In one hand hung his bolter, relaxed, but not truly lowered. His other rested on the hilt of his combat blade. His expression was carved from stone beneath his helmet. The air seemed to tighten between them. The Tau lifted his rifle with smooth precision, its barrel aimed directly at the Space Marine's chest plate. The Eldar stepped forward, her emerald blade humming as it slid into a guard position. Her wings flared wide in a challenge. Titus reacted instantly, bolter raised, his sights fixed on the Tau's visor. The wind hissed across the amphitheatre, sand swirling between them. "Stand down," Titus said, his voice a cold command, honed by centuries of war. The Tau didn't move. "My ring brought me here, human, but it did not say why. And now I see a soldier of man wearing it. That demands answers." The Eldar's lips curved into a smirk, but her eyes were dangerous. "The Tau is right. My ring told me of this core, of its will, but it did not tell me that its first leader would be human. I have fought humans before. Their arrogance is boundless." Titus's bolter didn't waver, but his voice was level, carrying the weight of something hard-won. "The ring chose me. I did not ask for it, and I was told that the ring chooses the bearer. Not me, not you, nor anyone else. Whatever it saw in me, it saw the same in you as well." He slowly lowered his weapon, though his stance was still guarded. "This is not what I expected," he admitted. "But we are the first of the new core. If you cannot accept that, hand over your rings." His gauntleted hand shifted, resting deliberately on the grip of his bolter. "And I will remember my original oath." The Eldar laughed softly, a sound like wind through broken glass. "You forget, monkey, that the Eldar have seen horrors your kind cannot imagine. The arrogance of humanity is quaint." The Tau lowered his rifle a fraction, but his posture remained tense. "My people do not follow leaders blindly." Titus gave a single, curt nod. "Good. Then you will follow the will of the ring, or you will stand aside." The conversation ended with a sound like thunder tearing the sky. All three heads turned upward. 6 shapes punched through the atmosphere, leaving contrails of sickly yellow light behind them. The very air seemed to sour, the weight of fear pressing down on the planet as the sigil of the Yellow Lantern Corps burned in the sky. They descended fast, armoured giants in black and gold, each one bristling with weapons forged from nightmares. They hit the plaza with force enough to shatter the ancient stone. At their head was a towering brute whose armor plates were carved with hooked sigils. His eyes burned like molten gold, and his voice was a growl that sank into the bones. Green lanterns, he spat, making the title sound like filth. Surrender your rings. Lay them at my feet, or I will peel them from your corpses, and I will take the rest of your skin as a trophy. Titus stepped forward, his gaze locked on the Yellow Lantern leader. No. The brute tilted his head, its smile widening. Titus drew his bolt pistol in one smooth motion and fired. The bolt round crossed the space in less than a heartbeat, punching into the Yellow Lantern's head. His brain exploded in a blossom of blood and yellow light. The corpse hit the stone before the others even processed what had happened. Shock froze the 5 remaining Yellow Lantern warriors. Titus looked over his shoulder at the Tau and Eldar. His voice was low, almost conversational. Will you join me? The Tau's visor flared emerald. For the greater good. The Eldar's smirk sharpened into something like respect. Try to keep up, human. All 3 launched into the air, their rings flaring, emerald contrails twisting together. The Yellow Lanterns recovered from their shock, with roars of fury, their power rings spitting beams of molten fear energy. Titus met the first volley head-on, emerald shields snapping into existence before him. His bolter barked, again and again, each shot a thunderous detonation that tore through the yellow constructs. The Tau fought with a sniper's precision, weaving through the sky, his rifle's green bolts slicing through enemy armor joints. Every shot was calculated, every movement an economy of survival learned on battlefields far from here. The Eldar became a storm, wings flaring, blade a flicker of light as she carved through yellow constructs in rapid passes, leaving trails of hard light feathers spinning in her wake. One Yellow Lantern conjured a massive, clawed serpent of fear energy that lunged at the Tau. The Fire Warrior's visor flashed, and a green mech suit construct enveloped him in an instant. He caught the serpent's jaws in both emerald gauntlets, twisted hard, and wrenched its head free in a spray of yellow sparks. Another conjured a rain of razor-edged discs aimed at the Eldar. She folded her wings, dropping into a dive, and erupted upward in a tight spin. Emerald spears burst from her hands to impale the discs mid-flight. Titus closed with the largest of the remaining lanterns, deflecting a blow from a yellow energy maul with a conjured emerald shield the size of a tank. His bolter roared into the lantern's gut at point-blank range, blowing him apart in a wash of emerald and gold. The final 2 Yellow Lanterns regrouped, pouring combined fire into the trio. The blasts tore at the air, forcing Titus, the Tau, and the Eldar to split. On my mark, Titus barked through the comms, voice steady despite the chaos. He soared straight at them, drawing their focus, absorbing their fury into a massive construct shield. The Tau flanked left, building an enormous railgun construct, the barrel glowing hotter with each passing second. The Eldar flanked right, her blade elongating into a spear of blinding green light. Mark! The Tau's railgun fired, punching a hole through the first Yellow Lantern's chest, the beam leaving nothing but ash. The Eldar's spear pierced the last one clean through, the construct shattering into motes of fading light. The desert was silent again. Only the wind, and the fading trails of battle in the sky. The three landed in the amphitheatre's centre. Their armour was scorched, but their spirits were unbroken. Titus surveyed the battlefield, then looked at the Tau and Eldar in turn. This was just the first strike. Kroaxis will send more, stronger. We can't stay scattered. The Tau inclined his head. Then we strike first. The Eldar smiled faintly. Perhaps you're not as dull as I feared. Titus turned toward the horizon, where the sun bled into the dunes. Then let's begin. Above them, their rings pulsed in unison, emerald light flaring brighter, a promise and a warning. The ambush site hung on the fringe of the galaxy, a place where stars thinned into darkness and only the oldest, coldest suns still burned. Here, the void was deep enough to swallow even the echoes of war. 3 emerald flares drifted among the debris of a shattered moon, its fragments hanging motionless in the silence. The Tau fire warrior crouched on one jagged shard, his armour dimmed to blend with the rock's shadow, his visor scanning telemetry fed directly from his ring. "Contact," he said over the shared channel. His voice was low and precise. "It's Kroaxis' fleet, Vector 217, closing fast." The Eldar floated above, her emerald wings folded close. Her eyes were fixed on the growing specks of gold on the far horizon. "I count at least 30 ships, escorts, carriers, and something larger." Her voice carried the sharp edge of an ancient predator. Titus stood atop the largest fragment of the moon. His ceramite boots were anchored in the rock. The emerald light traced across his armour like veins of fire. His bolter was maglocked to his hip. He studied the enemy formation with the same cold focus he had used on battlefields over the centuries. "They expected us to run," he said, "so we'll do the opposite." Kroaxis' fleet swept into view, a tide of black and gold warships cutting across the starlight. The lead vessel was a fortress in motion, kilometers of armor bristling with weaponry, its hull crowned by the jagged sigil of the Yellow Lantern Corps. Fear's light bled into the void ahead of them, a psychic pressure that clawed at the mind. Even through the emerald barrier of their rings, it was a weight pressing down on the 3 lanterns. In the heart of the flagship, Kroaxis stood on his command deck, gauntleted claws resting on the rail. His molten gold eyes narrowed at the faint emerald signatures flickering on his sensors. "They're waiting for us," he growled. "Good." The Tau's ring pulsed once, positions locked. From the shadows of the moon's debris field, emerald light ignited. Massive constructs materialized in the void, boarding torpedoes shaped from the mind of a space marine, guided by the precision of Tau targeting systems, tipped with Eldar runic foci to pierce shield harmonics. The first volley struck home before the Yellow Fleet could raise their full defences. Emerald projectiles punched into the flanks of escort frigates, detonating in blinding blossoms of green fire. The Tau was already moving, weaving through enemy return fire. His rifle spat precise bursts of hard light that bore through exposed reactor housings. Each shot was calculated, never wasted. The Eldar became a comet, her wings flaring wide, her emerald blade lengthening into a glaive as she slashed across the hull of a destroyer, carving through weapon mounts and sensor arrays in a single pass. Yellow plasma fire chased her, but she was already gone, leaving only fragments spinning into the void. Titus punched through the shattered armour of a corvette's bridge, his ring forming a sealed voidlock around him. Inside the ship, he moved like a storm, bolter roars, emerald shields passing through panicked crew, every step clearing a path toward the reactor. "Ship's gone," he said flatly, moments before a green bloom lit the void where the corvette had been. Despite the opening blows, the yellow fleet tightened formation, their flagship driving forward like a spearhead. Massive fear energy cannons flared, their beams cutting through the moon's debris and forcing the trio back. "They're regrouping," the Tau reported. "We won't win this in skirmishes." Titus's mind was already moving. "Then we build something they can't ignore." He held out his hand, his ring flared, projecting schematics into the void. The outline of a weapon the size of a city, forged from their combined willpower. "Macro cannon spinal mount," he said, his voice steady. "Tau fusion core, Eldar lance arrays, and enough emerald containment to keep it from tearing itself apart." The Tau's visor flared. With enough focusing crystals, it could punch through even Kroaxis' ship. The Eldar's lips curved into a rare, sharp smile. A spear to pierce the heart of fear. They moved without saying another word. Titus anchored the structure's supermassive barrel, every line of it forged from his unshakable vision of an artillery death machine that had shattered fortresses on 100 worlds. The Tau fed his knowledge into the fusion chambers. Twin suns were caged in emerald lattices, their heat enough to vaporize a continent. The Eldar wove arrays of bright lances into the barrel's length, each runed crystal humming with lethal focus, their harmonics tuned to shred fear energy constructs at the molecular level. Piece by piece, it took shape in the void, a weapon longer than a battleship, surrounded by the glow of 3 wills united in purpose. On Kroaxis' flagship, alarms screamed. Targeting pict feeds showed the weapon's growing silhouette. Kroaxis' eyes narrowed. "All batteries, on that, now." Yellow fire raked the void, carving through the moon fragments, hammering the forming cannon. The structure shuddered, emerald flares dimming under the assault. The Eldar's voice cut through the comms. "Shields failing on Sector 7. "I'll hold it," Titus answered, slamming his gauntlets against the cannon's plating. The ring expanded his will into a shield wall that absorbed the incoming barrage. Each hit a hammer blow against his mind. His teeth bared, but he didn't move. The Tau's voice was calm, despite the chaos. Fusion cores at maximum, containment stable, targeting locked. The Eldar's hands danced across the focusing lattice, each rune flaring in sequence. Lances are aligned. Titus's voice was a steady command. "Fire." The void lit emerald. The fusion cores unleashed their caged suns into the macro barrel, the bright lances converging their focused beams into the energy stream. The result was a singularity of willpower and destruction, a spear of pure green light that crossed the void in less than a heartbeat. It punched through the first lines of escorts as though they were smoke. It bored through a cruiser, ripping its spine apart in a chain of detonations, and then it struck the flagship. Emerald light erupted from the other side of Kroaxis' warship, molten armor and burning atmosphere venting into the void. Fear's glow sputtered and died along the entire flank. Panic rippled through the yellow fleet. Smaller ships broke formation, fleeing in disarray. Titus, the Tau, and the Eldar struck like predators into the chaos, tearing engines from frigates, spearing fleeing corvettes with beams of emerald fire, and scattering what remained. On the flagship, Kroaxis stood amid the smoke and alarms, one claw gripping the railing hard enough to dent the metal. His molten gaze turned toward the fading emerald contrails in the void. "Impressive," he growled. "This galaxy fights harder than I thought." He turned to his surviving lieutenant. "Fall back, and bring me the bodies of our fallen." From the flagship's hangars, dozens of yellow flares streaked outward. Yellow power rings, freed from the cold fingers of their dead wielders. They shot into the void in all directions, seeking new bearers, new soldiers to replace the fallen. Kroaxis' voice was low, almost amused. "Let's see how many champions this galaxy can breed." The yellow fleet limped into the black, leaving only drifting wreckage and the emerald-lit silhouettes of 3 warriors standing in the void. The spear of emerald dawn burned behind them. Titus's voice broke the silence. "This isn't the end." Above them, their 3 rings pulsed in unison, their emerald fire blazing against the darkness. A warning carried to every corner of the galaxy. The wreckage of the battle still drifted across the black like the bones of a dead god. Chunks of shattered hull tumbled slowly, their edges glowing with the fading heat of impact. The spear of emerald dawn hung silent at the center, its vast frame dimming now that its purpose had been spent. Only the faint emerald shimmer of its containment fields still burned against the void. Titus stood on one of the weapon's stabilizing struts, his mag-locked boots fixed in place, the glow of his ring casting green fire across the battle-worn ceramite of his armor. He was silent, eyes scanning the void, counting the enemy hulls now reduced to slag. Even with the rout, the enemy's shadow still lingered. Fear had a way of clinging to the edges of a battlefield long after any guns had fallen silent. Above him, the Eldar hovered in the stillness. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes moved constantly, searching. Even here in the aftermath, she looked like a predator, not yet convinced that the kill was complete. The Tau was already working, his hands moving across a translucent projection of tactical data hovering before him. Damage estimates, energy readings, debris trajectories, the kind of quiet, methodical assessment only a soldier used to precision warfare could manage. No one spoke for a time. The silence was the kind only space could hold. No wind, no dust, no rustle of movement, only the unbroken dark and the memory of light. Finally, Titus broke it. "They'll be back." The Eldar's gaze shifted to him, sharp as a blade. "Of course. Fear doesn't surrender. It regroups. The Tau didn't look up from his data. Kroaxis will adapt. Our ambush was effective. It will not be again. Titus nodded once. The motion was slow and deliberate. Then we prepare for the next strike. He let the words hang for a moment, the unspoken truth riding in their weight. And after that, we need to decide what comes next. The Eldar tilted her head, faint amusement in her voice. You speak as though you already see a war beyond this one. There is always another war, Titus said flatly. And when these yellow lanterns are broken, the question will be, what then? The Tau looked up now, his visor catching the light of his ring. We go back to our peoples. That is the way of things. Titus's eyes narrowed, the faintest curve of disdain at the edge of his mouth. Back to killing each other. That is what we were before the rings found us, the Tau replied. His tone was not defensive, merely factual. And still are, the Eldar added, her voice carrying a note of mocking truth. You, warrior of Macrage, have slain more of my kind than you can count. I have hunted your soldiers across the webway and watched them burn worlds I once walked. Titus's gaze met hers, unflinching. And yet here we are, standing on the same battlefield, wearing the same light. The Eldar's eyes narrowed. Temporarily. Perhaps, Titus said. But the truth is, we may be enemies, but we are not the greatest threats to this galaxy. His voice hardened, each word like a bolt round. I have fought the servants of the warp, the traitor legions, the demons of chaos. I have seen Tyranid hive fleets strip worlds to nothing in a matter of days. I have fought orc war hosts, so vast their ships blotted out the stars. The Imperium has stood against them for 10,000 years, and even we have not been enough to end them. The Tau's expression was unreadable beneath his visor. You speak of threats your Imperium has long exaggerated to justify its wars. Believe what you will, Titus said, his tone sharp as his combat knife. But now, he raised his hand, the emerald ring blazing in the dark. Now we have something else, something the enemy has never faced. The Eldar's voice was cold silk. You mean humanity has something else? Titus turned to her fully, the green light tracing the edges of his armor. My first duty is, and always will be, to humanity. That will never change. There was no apology in his tone, only truth. But the Guardian has shown me there may be another path. One where we turn our strength not against each other, but against those who would devour us all. The Tau's gaze drifted back to his display, but there was a pause, the kind that spoke of a reluctant consideration. For now, Titus continued, we have one enemy, the Yellow Lanterns. When they are gone, we speak again of what comes next. The Eldar's lips curved into the faintest ghost of a smile, but her eyes still carried the weight of suspicion. You ask for trust that does not exist. I ask for cooperation, Titus replied. Trust is a luxury for another time. The Tau inclined his head slightly. Agreed. For now, your logic is sound. The Eldar's wings unfolded slightly, emerald light shimmering across their edges. Very well, Space Marine. We fight together. For now. Titus gave a single nod. Then it settled. The void ruptured in yellow. It wasn't the cold glimmer of distant wreckage, or the faint burn of dying engines. This light was raw and violent, a sudden detonation of fear that seared through the black. The emerald glow around them warped under its glare, shadows stretching into jagged claws across their armor. From the radiance, shapes took form, not emerging, but stalking from the light like predators stepping into a kill. Massive figures in corrupted ceramite, the colour drowned in burnished brass and crawling cracks of yellow fire. Wings of flayed skin hung in tatters from their backs, twitching in the cold vacuum as if still alive. Their armour bore lightning bolt scars that seemed to writhe, almost alive under the sickly light. Night Lords, Chaos Space Marines, and each wore the mark of fear on their hand, a yellow lantern's ring, burning like a predator's eye. The first one's vox didn't so much broadcast as intrude, a voice thick with static and something deeper, like whispers pressed against the inside of your skull. "I can hear your hearts beating," he rasped. "3 little flames, thinking they can burn back the dark." His words twisted into a slow, rattling chuckle. "Let's snuff them out and see how long your screams last without your lungs." Another giant shifted forward, talons flexing, arcs of yellow lightning snapping between them in hungry spasms. His voice was colder, more deliberate, a butcher's tone. The Night Lords didn't charge, they descended, a slow, deliberate advance. Fear light poured from their rings, condensing into shapes that shifted and split. Talons, chains, the flayed faces frozen mid-scream. The constructs drifted toward the lanterns, not in haste, but inevitability. The 3 green lanterns moved as one. Their formation was instinctive, born not from trust, but from the knowledge that the first to break would be the first to die. And then the stars went mad. Emerald will and yellow fear collided in the black, lighting the void with the colours of defiance and damnation. The void exploded into motion. Yellow fear light erupted around the Night Lords, boiling into jagged talons, flailing chains, and grotesque, screaming faces that clawed at the edges of perception. The shadows themselves twisted, warped, and split as if the very darkness had come alive, reaching out for the green lanterns before they could react. Titus acted first. Emerald fire surged from his ring, and the void twisted into the shape of Imperium warcraft. Constructs born of memory and will. A chainsword arced in a deadly swipe through the first Night Lord, glowing with green energy and sparking as it sheared through the enemy ceramite. A massive power fist formed around his gauntlet, smashing into the corrupted marine's chest, sending shockwaves through the surrounding debris. With a thought, a green flamer burst to life, spewing searing emerald fire that roared across the void and carved through the skeletal remains of a yellow construct. Each weapon was alive with his will, precise and devastating, the embodiment of every battlefield he had fought on Macragge and beyond. The Eldar's constructs were alien, elegant, yet lethal. Emerald ribbons of light coalesced into glaives, whips, and spinning discs etched with runes that glimmered as they cut through the Night Lord's fear forms. A crescent-shaped scythe bloomed from the void, spinning like a predator's claw, slashing through talons and chains with surgical precision. Twin runic discs darted around her like hunting falcons, intercepting flying constructs before they could strike her allies. Each movement was a dance, a deadly interplay of grace and savagery, and even as her construct struck, the Night Lord's fearlight flared back in opposition, forming twisting, screaming mockeries of her weapons, flailing silhouettes of green that seemed alive with hatred. The Tau's constructs were precise, tactical, and brutally efficient. Hard-light drones formed into missile pods, miniature fusion cannons, and spear-like lances that whipped across the void with mathematical perfection. A web of emerald targeting lines arced between each construct, calculating angles, trajectories, and weaknesses in the enemy's armour. When one Night Lord leapt toward him, his drones shifted, forming a concussive net of spinning spears that pinned their attacker in place, letting him strike with a fury of focused, hard light bursts. Each construct was unique, engineered in a fraction of a second, combining raw firepower with strategy and precision. The Night Lords responded with nightmarish ingenuity. Fearlight twisted into forms that should not exist. Spiked, serpentine limbs that writhed like living barbed wire. Gaping mouths that screamed silently into the void. Skeletal hands reaching from nowhere to grab at flesh and armor alike. Chains fused with shadows, lashing unpredictably, tearing at constructs, and some coalesced into skeletal cavalry, mounted on spectral horses whose hooves struck sparks from the floating debris. One construct became a writhing mass of yellow lightning and flayed faces, each scream vibrating through the lantern's minds. The very air of the void seemed to shudder under the weight of these horrors. Titus swung his chainsword and punched with his power fist, each strike collapsing a claw or snapping a skeletal arm. He unleashed his flamer at clusters of fear constructs, melting them into green mist that drifted harmlessly. A Night Lord lunged with his talons arcing, only for Titus to counter with an emerald replica of a heavy bolter, tearing through armor and yellow constructs alike. The Eldar darted between fragments of hull, spinning her scythe. One of her targets, a massive clawed construct of yellow light, reared like a nightmare, jaws gaping, its eyes screaming. She leapt and slammed her glaive through it. The construct exploded into shards of yellow energy, but another formed instantly, skeletal hands rising from the debris to clutch at her wings. She deflected with a whip of emerald light, tossing the construct back into the void. The Tau orchestrated a coordinated counter, each drone weaving through the chaos, striking weak points, and forcing the Night Lords into kill zones where Titus and the Eldar could strike. One yellow claw lunged for him, but he responded with a sudden fusion lance, firing a beam so precise it striked through the construct mid-air, detonating into a blast that sent a Night Lord spinning into a wreck of debris. The Night Lords continued to adapt. Fearlight morphed, combining with the broken hulls to create enormous walking constructs. Skeletal engines bristling with jagged energy, spitting lightning and screaming faces. One lunged at Titus, its head splitting into two screaming faces. The Eldar intercepted it, flinging a disc that tore through the construct's skulls, but another immediately replaced it, identical and screaming. The battle dragged on with intensity. Each lantern was tested beyond their endurance. The Tau ducked a jagged limb of a yellow energy that tore across a drifting hull, his drone swarming the construct and grinding it into harmless fragments. Titus blocked a talon with his flamer. The heat of the emerald fire seared his own gauntlet and made his ceramite smoke, before punching it back into a collision with another construct. The Eldar spun, each movement a flurry of blades and energy, dodging talons, smashing chains, and cutting screaming faces from the ghostly enemy constructs. Minutes passed as a blur of green and yellow. The Night Lord's construct became increasingly grotesque, yet despite the horror, the lanterns adapted. Each knew the other's strengths. Titus's weapons crushed openings, the Eldar's strikes tore apart their formations, and the Tau's precision fire coordinated the battlefield like a deadly chess game. Finally, after punishing effort, the last Night Lord was struck down. A chainsword burst through their chest, the Eldar's discs shredded another, and the Tau's lance pierced the final construct, collapsing the yellow light into shards that drifted away like mist. Silence returned, the void trembling with the energy of the fallen and smouldering fragments of debris. But then a presence came. A wave of yellow suffused the void, thick, oppressive, and alive with malice. Kroaxis emerged, massive, molten gold eyes burning, his armour a writhing landscape of jagged energy and molten metal. The stars seemed to dim around him as his shadow stretched across the wreckage. Before any of them could react, a massive hand of yellow light erupted from the void, lashing across space and grabbing the Tau warrior. The construct twisted and convulsed, morphing into a hideous spinning blender of jagged blades and brass chains, shredding the Tau instantly. Green light flared in desperation, but it was too late. The Tau was reduced to atoms. Titus and the Eldar were left standing amid the floating wreckage, their hearts pounding, their rings flaring in unison. Kroaxis's molten gaze swept across them, his eyes like twin suns of malice. Titus spoke, his voice low, controlled, but edged with fury. "You'll burn for that." The Eldar's wings flared, glimmering in emerald fire as her blade glowed and sizzled with renewed will. Kroaxis raised his clawed hand, yellow construct swirling around him like a living storm. This was no mere battle. This was a clash that would decide the fate of the galaxy. The void quivered with Kroaxis's presence. Yellow light boiled around him in a roiling cyclone of jagged claws, warped chains, and screaming faces torn from the nightmares of 1,000 species. His molten eyes fixed upon Titus and the Eldar warrior, and every instinct screamed at them to flee, but neither moved. Titus's ring flared, emerald fire forming the shape of a massive storm bolter, bristling with heavy shells. He fired, each round a green comet slamming into Kroaxis' chest plate. The rounds detonated in a staccato storm of light and pressure. Kroaxis' gauntleted hand rose, and the shells froze mid-air, each one unravelling into spectral blades of yellow energy. With a lazy flick, the blades spun back at Titus. The ultramarine turned Green Lantern raised a shield construct, thick as a fortress wall. The yellow blades hit and bit into it, gnawing through the green like acid on ice. The Eldar streaked in from the flank, her emerald wings cutting through the debris field. Her whip of light cracked forward, wrapping around Kroaxis' wrist. Runes flared across the whip's length, binding tighter. For a heartbeat, she had him. But Kroaxis twisted his free hand. The whip unravelled into snakes of yellow light, each one screaming in her own voice. They swarmed around her arm, her wings, her throat. She cut them apart with a spinning glaive, but the distraction cost her. A backhand from Kroaxis' gauntlet hurled her across the wreckage, shattering an asteroid into spinning gravel. Titus charged, his chainsword blazing in his right hand, a construct power fist swelling over his left. He struck high with the sword and low with the fist, but Kroaxis caught both. With a sickening crack, the power fist splintered under pressure, green shards dissolving into motes. The chainsword dissolved next. Its teeth were eaten away by a swarm of tiny yellow wasps that poured from Kroaxis' gauntlet like liquid. The void rang with Kroaxis' voice. "You are children with fire in your hands." His counterattack was relentless. Every construct they made, he answered with something more cunning, more vicious. Titus formed a squadron of green ultramarines, firing disciplined volleys. Kroaxis birthed a warband of towering night lords, each one a fusion of demon and memory. Their bolters spitting spectral rounds that exploded inside the lantern constructs, tearing them apart. The Eldar hurled spinning discs of light. Kroaxis sent forth a flock of metal crows, their beaks made of hooked lightning, intercepting and shattering the discs mid-flight. Titus unleashed a flamer's emerald roar. Kroaxis answered with a tidal wave of molten gold, extinguishing the fire and slamming Titus into a drifting cruiser hull. They fought like this for minutes that felt like hours. Every blow they landed, Kroaxis matched or overpowered. Every tactic was countered with the precision born of centuries of battle and a mastery of the ring that they could barely contend with. Titus's lungs burned. His mind screamed under the strain of constant construct formation. The Eldar's wings were tattered where Kroaxis' strikes had clipped her. Still they fought, because they had no other choice. And then, the void shifted. It wasn't sight, it wasn't sound, it was weight, as if an ocean had descended upon them, pressing down on their armour, their bones and their thought. The yellow cyclone around Kroaxis faltered for the first time, constructs quivering as if sensing something older, greater. Green light began to seep into the edges of space, soft at first, then building. It didn't flicker or crackle. It radiated. Kroaxis turned, his molten eyes narrowing. No. The green intensified, not in heat or glare, but in presence. A hum rose in the void, deep enough to shake asteroids into dust. Titus and the Eldar shielded their eyes as the brilliance swelled into a corona of pure will made manifest. Through the radiance, a silhouette formed, towering, broad, cloaked in the shadow of a legend. The voice that followed was calm, resolute, and impossibly certain. This ends now. Kroaxis hissed like a cornered predator. You. The green light parted like a curtain, revealing the master of Ultramar, Rebirth Guilliman. His armor gleamed cerulean and gold beneath the green radiance of the ring, coiled around his left hand. His right hand held the hand of Dominion, its power field crackling, every inch a weapon of war. He stepped forward, the void itself seeming to brace under his stride. "The ring found me on Terra," Guilliman said. "It led me here to end you." Kroaxis roared and tried to strike first. A storm of yellow chains and screaming faces lashed out, but Guilliman's ring flared, and everything stopped in midair. The constructs froze, unraveling into harmless mist. In a blink, Guilliman was on him. The Primarch's fist, green-wreathed, reinforced by ceramite and willpower, slammed into Kroaxis' chest with the force of a meteor strike. The alien warlord flew backward into an asteroid, the rock shattering into 1,000 fragments. Kroaxis countered with a spiked serpent of yellow light, coiling around Guilliman's arm, but Guilliman gripped it, twisted, and the serpent shattered into sparks. He surged forward, every movement faster than Titus thought possible for someone so massive. Fist, blade, will. Each strike was absolute. Guilliman didn't just counter the constructs, he destroyed them the moment they formed, overwhelming Kroaxis with sheer dominance. The final blow came as Guilliman's gauntleted hand, wrapped in emerald energy, clamped around Kroaxis' head. Green light poured in, burning away the yellow from within. The warlord's scream was both physical and psychic, a shriek that rattled bones. Then, silence. Kroaxis' body fell, his armor collapsing into fragments, his ring clattering to the ground before disintegrating into nothing. Titus and the Eldar floated amid the wreckage, stunned. Guilliman turned, his weapon still humming with power. His gaze settled not on Titus, but the Eldar. "You." Guilliman's voice was quiet, but it carried across the void like a commandment. The hand of Dominion rose, its power field shimmering in the green radiance that bled from the Primarch's newly won ring. The Eldar's wings snapped open, emerald light cascading across their rune-etched feathers. Her glaive spun once in her grip, a predator's flourish. She said nothing. Her eyes, sharp and bright as a blade's edge, were locked on Guilliman's. Titus moved before she could attack. His boots scraped against the floor beneath them as he stepped squarely between the two. His own constructs dissolved at his side in a gesture of absolute focus. "My lord," Titus said, his voice firm. "No." Guilliman's gaze narrowed, his helm's lenses burning like twin suns. "Step aside, Captain." With respect, Titus's jaw was set. His voice didn't waver. "I cannot." You know what she is, Guilliman pressed, each word heavy as a siege cannon shell. A Xenos. And yet she wields what could be the Imperium's salvation. With these rings in humanity's hands, we could burn chaos from the galaxy, shred the Tyranids, end the orc infestation forever. Why should she keep it? Titus didn't flinch. Because it is not ours to take. The rings choose. Always. That choice is beyond you, beyond me, beyond any mortal. The Eldar stepped forward until her shadow fell across Titus's back. Her voice was cold steel wrapped in fire. And I would dearly like to watch you try to take it from me. The void seemed to pause, the silence stretching. Guilliman's towering frame was still, his expression unreadable behind the mask of discipline he had worn for thousands of years. Then, just for a heartbeat, the corner of his mouth curved into the smallest of smiles. Titus caught it, exhaling slowly. "If I may, my lord," he said carefully, "grant me your leave to lead this Green Lantern Corps in our galaxy. We will fight beside whomever the rings choose, human, Eldar, or otherwise, against all who would see the galaxy burn." Guilliman's gaze shifted to the Eldar. "And what say you?" Her tone was measured, but her words were edged. "Were it mine to decide, the Eldar alone would bear these rings. Humanity has not earned them. But I see the value in this core. Better that one of my people holds a place within it than none at all." For several long moments, Guilliman was silent. The green light around him ebbed and surged as if weighing her words. Finally, he inclined his head. "So be it. The rings will choose their bearers. You will fight in concert against the galaxy's true enemies. But I will not fight beside you." The Eldar's brow furrowed. "Why?" "Because the Imperium cannot survive without its regent," Guilliman said, his voice tightening. "If I abandon Terra, the species I serve will fracture within a generation. But," he glanced at the green band on his finger, "I will wield the Imperium's might in your cause. My fleets, my armies, brought to bear against chaos, the Tyranids, the orcs. Together, we will break them." He turned, the hand of dominion lowered. The emerald halo faded from his armor with each step he took toward the darkness. Titus called after him. "We will begin at once, my lord." Guilliman didn't turn. His form dissolved into the warp light, leaving only the echo of his voice behind. Titus lowered his gaze to the Eldar. "I never asked your name." Her head tilted slightly, and for the first time since they met, there was a flicker, just a flicker, of softness in her expression. "Oriindra." Titus nodded once, the green light from his ring flickering across his scarred face. "Then, Oriindra, let's get to work." In deep space, at the edge of the Gaul stars, the Tyranid fleet blotted out the stars. Bioships the size of cities drifted like predatory whales, their hulls ridged with spines and pulsing sacs. Endless streams of spores and feeder tentacles spilled from their maws into the void. But 2 points of green light burned in the darkness. Titus moved like a spear cast by a god, his constructs hammering through the swarm in relentless salvos. Battleship-sized railguns, each forged of pure will, launched emerald projectiles that tore through hive ships and kept going, detonating in the shadows beyond. A wedge of phalanx constructs, each one an unbreakable wall manned by will-forged ultramarines, surged ahead of him, smashing into living tendrils and severing them with brutal precision. Beside him, Oriandra was a streak of emerald fire and blade light. Her wings cut swathes through the spore clouds, each beat scattering them like mist before a hurricane. Runes flared along her constructs, crescent scythes cleaving through swarms of gargoyles, nets of glowing silk binding entire feeder beasts before they could strike. She moved with alien grace, each strike perfectly in sync with Titus's brutal, hammer-like blows. A hive ship loomed ahead, its armoured carapace thicker than a fortress wall. The Eldar's discs spun ahead like hunting falcons, carving into the armour until Titus's spear lance slammed home, piercing deep into the beast's synapse node. The ship screamed, not with sound but with psychic agony, before it burst apart in a corona of green fire. For every Tyranid they killed, 1,000 more surged forward. Yet their rings never dimmed, their will never faltered. Together, they carved genocide into the heart of the swarm. On Terra, inside the Imperial Palace, the shadows in the Sanctum Imperialis were deep and ancient. Even the green light from Guilliman's ring seemed to tread carefully here, wary of this place's sacred weight. The regent of Ultramar stood before the golden throne. The withered form of the Emperor loomed in its vast seat, silent, unmoving. A god bound in a coffin of gold. Guilliman's eyes lingered on that face, serene and terrible, caught between life and death. The ring on his finger pulsed faintly, its glow reflected in the Emperor's hollow eye sockets. If this ring can conjure anything I will, Guilliman's voice was low, almost reverent. Perhaps it can heal. The green light brightened for an instant, a single slow heartbeat of power, as if answering. Guilliman's gaze sharpened, his gauntleted hand flexed once. The air seemed to thrum, heavy with possibilities too dangerous to name. The Primarch's next breath was slow, measured. A man standing at the edge of a decision that could be humanity's salvation, or bring about its doom.